Welcome to the GOODNITE Show. Today we're talking about Venezuela, oil, and geopolitics, and how these shifts can impact not only Alberta's energy industry, but Canada's greater economy. I'm joined by Pedro Pereira, who grew up in Venezuela, worked in the oil industry for most of his life, and moved to Canada in 2003, shortly after Chavez took power in 1998. He spent 18 years as a full professor at the University of Calgary and has developed commercially viable solutions now used across the industry, specializing in catalytic technologies, hydrogen decarbonization, and heavy oil refining and upgrading. Pedro, welcome.
Welcome to the GOODNITE Show, featuring your host, Jordan Geske.
Thank you for the invitation, first of all, and it's a pleasure to be here and talking about the country where I was born and where I grew up.
You have the credentials.
Apparently so, yeah.
No, that's awesome. Thank you so much. And thanks for coming in and talking about this on short notice so that we can cover what's going on in Venezuela, how it affects people here in Canada, how it affects the oil economy globally, and kind of what are some of the similarities and what are kind of some of the myths going around and what can we squash on that, right?
Yeah.
I think one thing that you mentioned a few times that just for any viewer who is more curious and just wants to learn a little bit about what oil sands are, right? So there's different kind of densities of oil, and the oil sands, it's literally like almost a tar sand that has to be extracted, which takes some pretty intensive processing, right? So how similar are the oil sands down in Venezuela to ours, and what are some of the other types that are produced?
The most direct answer is they are identical.
Yeah.
I mean, you can analyze, characterize, we call it, an oil from the Canadian oil sands in northern Alberta and Saskatchewan, and you can take an oil from the Orinoco Belt, and if you are not paying attention, you can be having exactly the same oil if you make a mistake in the labeling and you don't realize.
Yeah.
So similar. Both are bituminous material. Even though an oil geologically, it is very shallow, relatively shallow, is usually present on sands that were bottom of the seas or deltas in prehistorical times, in millennials ago. But the difference is the ground in Canada, where these deposits are at, let's say, 400 meters, 500 meters from the surface, they are cold. They are in the range of 10 degrees C, so they are a very hard solid to move. You have to inject steam, you have to inject energy to be able to mobilize them. In Venezuela, the temperatures are higher, 70, 80 degrees C. The oil is, the petroleum is in a slightly deeper placement, 700 meters, 900 meters, and then therefore the mobility of the oil is a little bit better than in Canada, and we can achieve there some primary production. It's essentially what they have been doing during the last 2 or 3 decades in Venezuela, producing primary, a very inefficient way of producing, but is a very low investment. You just drill your wells, put a pump and try to push the oil to the surface at that temperature, but then you have to dilute quickly and transport it to 300 kilometers, 400 kilometers from where the oil sands are.
Yeah. The processing of oil sands it's a lot heavier and harder to do, and not everybody has the capability to do so. What's the capability of Venezuela versus Canada to actually process the oil sands?
Yeah, well, I must say Venezuela was with a higher capacity of production in the oil sands when I had to move out of the country. Venezuela was had already 4 upgraders that were very large, was already producing close to 1 million barrels per day only in the oil sands. That's 25 years ago, when Canada was probably in the range of 500,000, 400,000. Many of the development came in the first decade. I was here early in the 2000s. Still. And Venezuela had the upgraders, as I mentioned, and then had already experienced, incorporated, developed some technology. We produced what was called deor emulsion. I was incipiently involved in that. We produced upgrading, partial upgrading. We were already performing partial upgrading when still Canada was trying to explore. However, Canada obviously has sustained the development of the oil sands, and now it has a 2 million barrels per day capacity, perhaps more. I'm not lately updated, but that must be more or less. Venezuela instead has dropped. Many of the upgraders have had very bad maintenance. They were nationalized, what is synonymous of destruction almost, because the investment made by the state, once it nationalized, the use of the facilities is no longer really well performed. There's no training, adequate training to the people. There is disconnection now with the technology providers. I mean, it's a real disaster. It's a recipe for really destruction, and that's how Venezuela, from a total capacity or total production, was initially 3.9 when I left the capacity, and the production was at 3.2 more or less million barrels per day. Nowadays it's less than a million. It's in the range of 700, 900,000 barrels per day, and right now it must be half of it with all these political troubles. Many have left or abandoned. Iranians have just left from the ones that were trying to use some refineries to produce some fuels. They just left.
Yeah.
So,
let's dive a little bit into kind of the socioeconomics of why all that happened as well, and give people a little bit of history on the past leaders over there, such as Chavez and Maduro, and kind of what happened when you were leaving in the country. I was reading during the reign of Maduro, the average Venezuelan lost about 20 pounds, right, due to malnutrition. So what kind of expectations can we have, and how much is it going to take to be able to bring that back up, and what can we expect to see from the people in Venezuela and of the oil companies that Trump keeps saying is going to go and spend billions of dollars there?
Yeah. Okay. Let me put this a little bit historical position. This historically perspective. Chavez won the election in December 1998.
Yeah.
And took power very early, the first month of the 1999. February, I guess it was. And then at that moment, during the previous period, the 97, 98 was one of the deepest drop of the oil price in the world. I mean, the oil got prices in the range of $10 per barrel, coming from values that were in the 20s, $30 per barrel or more. Then that was a total that created a big deficit in the budget, and that's how Chavez won the elections. I mean, offering, the to revert this situation, favoring the poor and so on. The typical way in which some kind of that populist leaders access to power, and the people believed in it, and by just those rebounds that the oil industry has, the oil in 2 or 3 years after, in 2001, 2002, the oil got to be at $100 per barrel, $80 per barrel, even $120 per barrel at a given point. The Venezuelan average oil was probably in the $90 $90 per barrel. That created then a fortune. He was very fortunate, and even though that encouraged also him to take over a bunch of the sectors, and the oil industry was precisely the one that he targeted the most, and acknowledging most of the population that this was practically a plan between Chavez and Fidel Castro in Cuba, and that Chavez was a military considered a piece of Cuba in the Venezuelan army, like a kind of a penetration of Cuba in the Venezuelan army, and he had
he's
also
like a military asset
for them. Then the plan was just to try to take that energy petrodollar to the benefit of the revolution, or whatever they call it. The Cuban situation, but also trying to spread movements and buy countries against the United States, against Western industrialized countries in every sense. And many Caribbean islands, small nations, were bribed just to obtain their votes in the United Nations or the American organization of countries. And then that gave a very large prestige to Chavez, while he was practically making public the whole economic sector in Venezuela. All the industry that barely Venezuela had developed parallel to the oil economy was practically taking and expropriated enormous amount of land, agricultural, agro-processing, food, everything.
Yeah, so he stripped
glasses.
down basically.
He stripped down and left, and did the same with agreements that the nation had already with American oil companies, and that is what Trump is right. I mean, when he says that they invested, absolutely, not only them, Total from France, Eni from Italy, and many of the Western companies, Repsol, had a Norwegian oil company, had invested in the upgraders. The financing of all that technology for upgraders was done that were 300,000 barrels per day each or more. All that was made with the contribution of many foreign countries or corporations. And then suddenly, from a business where they were 51%, and Venezuela was 49%, designed with the intention precisely of give guarantees to these companies that the business was controlled by them, that there was not going to be an intromission of political aspects, because they fear, obviously, putting thousands of billions of hundreds of billions of dollars on together in the country. If I lose this, I lose a lot of money. And that's what happened with many of the companies there, ConocoPhillips and many others. And that was the fervor of the years in which the oil was at high price. I remember in 2008, I read a report of Saudi Arabia, where from the Aramco, where they were expecting that the United States would, in 10 years or 8 years, would be ramping up the production of oil, because the development of this technology that is fracking to recover oil from the what is called the tight oil, from very tight reservoirs, very narrow pores reservoir. And that's how the price of oil started getting down from the first 10 years of the 2000s to for 2013, 2014, where really the United States brought from $7 million, $8 million per barrel of barrels per day to $12 million per barrels per day. That changed dramatically the market. Dropped the oil again. And in that period, Chavez died. He died in 2013. And in 2013, already Maduro was the candidate, and he everybody believed had won the elections. But when we looked at the story of the elections, how clean they were, there is now demonstrated tricks that they implemented in the electoral machines and widely known now.
He stole the election.
They stole the election since Chavez, not since Maduro, but nobody suspected that they had bought the company that manufactured the electoral machines.
Oh, yeah.
And then from there started all these problems. And they concentrated, basically controlled the electoral system in Venezuela.
Yeah.
Chavez imposed tyranny. I mean, he was controlling first the legal system. They controlled then the parliament system. They controlled the electoral system, which was critical. And that's how they became really a de facto government. Maduro then didn't win any election cleanly. He lost 2 elections in a row, but nobody knew until technical people in Venezuela started realizing how could they be tricking the system. And then they, in the last election in 2024, they intercepted the communications and were able to obtain the real data and not the one that they were sending to certain countries. Friends of them, where they from where they received the results that they claimed they had obtained, but the real ones from the machines were early intercepted. So that changed the whole story of Venezuela. Maduro was never a clean president, but it was illegitimate from the moment it was demonstrated what was the trick that they were implementing in the elections. Now, this coming back to your question on how the oil industry was navigated during the Chavista regime, the first 10 years there was enough money to do all the political plan that they had, but also keep satisfied a good portion of the technical people that stay there. They were able to invest a little bit in Petróleos de Venezuela, but then after the 2013, the thing was a debacle. It was a total disinvestment. Most of the technical people remaining left. Again, it was a second wave. Now with the whole country practically. I mean, 9 million people in a country that was 28 million at the time migrated. And the gross of that population was the most educated people. So right now, Venezuela is strongly depleted, extremely depleted on qualified people. It doesn't mean this is not an insult for the Venezuelans that struggle and are trying to keep up with the country. But obviously, the whole experience, the whole knowledge generated by layers of generations left the country and went to Canada, U.S., Spain.
To continue working in the field.
In the field with other companies. And that's how Colombia, that used to produce 200,000 barrels per day, went to 1 million barrels per day with the contribution of thousands of Venezuelans.
You see that everywhere in the world whenever there's inflation, whenever there's oppression, what you see first is the people who have university degrees, the people who work in high-paying and more technical jobs. Those people are the first to leave, right? We see it a lot in Canada
but
right
I want
now.
to sensibilize Canadian people and everyone that here listen to this podcast, is that by far the largest migration in a short period of time produced anywhere at any time happened with Venezuela.
What was the timeline?
Okay, the timeline was between 2014 and 2018. In only 4 years,
over 1 million people a year.
More than 8 million people migrated out of Venezuela.
That's crazy.
So that is crazy. That is by far larger than Afghanistan, than Syria, than countries that were directly involved in war. But in Venezuela, the war was was inexistent. They had
So-
total power. Venezuela has never been a clan country. There is no quotas of power between regions or what. It was a real well-functioning democracy.
So was that it had to do more with like was there like oppression coming in from the Chavez regime, or like they just left due
No,
to
it was hunger. It was the 20 pounds that everyone lost.
Yeah.
It was that they had no money to import
Yeah.
any kind of food.
Yeah.
They had not resources to make the fields, the countryside, producing the food that could replace the imported one. There was no possibilities of
I was
having
reading 80%
seeds,
of
machinery, and nothing. Everything was abandoned. So
I was reading 80% of Venezuela's food at the time was imported. Only 20% was grown.
yeah, had never been. Venezuela doesn't have very good lands.
Very rocky, hillside.
Very rocky, yeah. But it's not like Colombia. Colombia is a very good agricultural country.
Mm-hmm.
But Venezuela had, let's say, the capability of producing 30-40% of the food until, let's say, the 80s or so. But in the 90s and early 2000s, that dropped dramatically, more than 20%. But on top, they nationalized or expropriated tons of agricultural developments.
Yeah. So basically, government corruption just went into all of
Correct.
these places. They strip it down as much as they can so they can take the money for themselves,
Correct.
leaving basically a skeleton crew to try to run the country. And then
That is exactly.
there were other things that happened as well, such as sanctions that didn't help with the imports. But
But that was much more recent.
that was further
Sanctions on
2020 or
Venezuela
so.
started in 2022,
Yeah.
2021.
Yeah.
It wasn't really the cause of the
definitely like a decade
hunger in
yeah.
the country.
Yeah. So, that's a big thing to understand about why the people are leaving and why there's nobody there who's able to run these. Is well, one, there was a lot of oppression. There was a lot of people that were starving. There was a lot of social stuff going on, and the corruption from the government wasn't just oppressing people. It had also ripped apart the agriculture and the oil and every single other sector that he could get his hands on.
The oil industry, people may believe may have that image of it's like just putting a pipe and the pressure and everything is going to pump the oil up, and that is not the case.
No.
Not in Venezuela, where we have let's say more than 100 years, 120 years practically of oil exploitation. The very good fields are very depleted. The Maracaibo Lake still has a lot of production, but has been going steadily down because it's being exploited. And then that's the easy oil and the better quality oil. So the oil sands is what Venezuela has, the Orinoco Belt that we call, is what Venezuela has as a big field. There's some other reservoirs of good quality oil that are compensate for that 1 million barrels per day that Venezuela was able to produce of good quality oil the early century. But if you, we have talked at the beginning, technically it's difficult to produce the oil sands in Alberta, but it's easier in Venezuela, but it's still technically demanding and costly. You still have to carry diluents to the production area, which is 300, 400 kilometers. It's like here from Calgary to Fort McMurray is 700, 600 kilometers. And that pipeline, double pipeline has to exist. There is, while technology is implemented, because I believe we have developed some technology that could change that situation. But in the Orinoco Belt also, the wells have to be more numerous because the production, as I mentioned, is very limited. Or you have to then start stimulating the reservoir, putting energy in it, injecting steam or injecting diluents or doing combustion, oxidation, partial air injection. All that requires much more investment than the conventional oil exploitation performed by Iran or Saudi Arabia or Kuwait in their excellent reservoirs.
Yeah.
Right? So Venezuela had no money to keep investing. The companies were not abandoning only, were declaring themselves never come back, or we would not put one more penny here because we are losing our investments.
Yeah.
So the situation was enormous. On top, many of them that left, they knew the people they had. They knew the Venezuelans that were working there, how competent they may be, how useful they may be. Then they decided to take them, also give them the possibility
you offer
of
them jobs to come with you when you leave,
Exactly.
right? So it's
very common.
and this happens all
the
the time. Right?
reinsertion happened for many
And you have tenure at the company. You know the people that work there.
top.
It's not like you don't make friends, right? Every workplace you're
Right.
going to become friends with people. You become colleagues long
Correct.
time. So it's interesting. And now seeing, I think there's two things following up with that, right? Is one, these companies, they feel like it might be safe to return as long as there is a hand that America has to say, okay, like as long as our interests are protected. There's also, before we get into that, so what I'm getting from this, though, is from the Chavez to the Maduro regime, something that not a lot of people probably realize. They may by now when this airs, but a lot of Venezuelans are probably quite happy to see the end of those two things, right? And they're probably hopeful.
95%, as I read today from a very serious pool company.
And they're probably hopeful to see democracy come back to the country.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So that's a big thing that people are happy about. How it happened is probably not the best way for things to happen. That's going to affect how foreign policy is instructed across the world to a degree, right? You don't shoot first and ask questions later. But at the same time, it was a criminal regime. And to my understanding, like Canada didn't even recognize Maduro as a leader of a country.
No, since 2019, I guess.
Yeah.
So Canada is not new. It's not because of the 2024 elections. It's because they knew he had made tricks on the electoral process, but also had deteriorated the legality in Venezuela. There was not an independent capability in Venezuela of complaining against the government, against any tropel that may do to the people, right?
And there's
so it's important.
A humanitarian epidemic when the person in charge of a country of almost 30 million people is allowing them to lose 20 pounds on average.
Well, the people
from
looking
malnutrition
for food at the back of the garbage trucks.
Yeah.
Running behind the garbage trucks.
And that shouldn't happen in a developing or developed country, especially one that has such a large reserve of the most wanted product in the world, right? And it's really, really sad to see. So there are some hopeful things that we can see coming down the road.
And regarding the oil, that is a very sensible aspect. Mm-hmm. The oil from Venezuela that could take over markets from the Canadian oil. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that is a topic of this conversation.
Yeah.
I consider is valid. And Venezuela has a capacity of producing oil right now that is 1/5 or even 1/8 of the capacity that it ever had at the best moment. Before right when Chavez entered the government. And nowadays, to duplicate from those 700,000, 900,000 to bring it to 1,500 or 1,600, it's going to take approximately 2 years, 3 years.
Yeah. So that's a big thing that we want to talk about.
That is barely 500,000 or 750,000 barrels per day.
Yeah.
And that will only compensate the decay of the Permian Basin, of the Eagle Ford Basin in the United States.
Yeah.
So there is no really menace in the next 3 to 5 years of the Venezuelan recovery on the Canadian market.
Yeah.
On the Canadian capacity of placing their oil.
Yeah. So I guess like if Venezuela had the resources to rebuild, right, the industry, there's probably still a lot of roadblocks even if they had the resources. One, you have to get the people to come back and the people have to feel like they're going to be very safe in this situation, and that it's going to be a long-term agreement.
How you restore a legal system that could decide between Chevron and Exxon or Shell or any other oil company, who is right and who is wrong, in a clean way.
Yeah.
I mean, there is nothing like that. All the judges were placed directly by Maduro, and they are against any private company in principle. But even if the state is eliminated and taken over by a temporary administration of Trump or the United States,
Yeah.
and there is no possibility. Everything would have to be decided then in the United States.
Yeah, and then you have your own layer of
And
corruption coming from somewhere else.
To implement that, that will be 6 months, a year. It cannot be faster than that.
Yeah.
So Venezuela, I don't think any oil company is going to be there present, apart Chevron, which is producing only 100,000 barrels per day.
Yeah.
So it's really a mystery what it's producing. It's important for the current production of Venezuela, but it's not important for impacting the market in any way.
Yeah.
But I say this because I want to take from Canadians, and I am Canadian, but obviously I am Venezuelan as well. That idea that we will impact the in short or in medium term the Canadian economy or the Albertan economy. On the contrary,
so that's a big one that I wanted to talk
I think
about.
we are helping in certain sense.
Yeah, and there's a lot of fear mongering on social media regarding oil production going up in Venezuela is going to bankrupt Canada. It's going to lose thousands of jobs. Let's kind of dive into that for a second, because the first thing is, I think a lot of the oil in Venezuela is spoken for, right? As you said, there's a lot of companies that have contracts, you said at the beginning. And then there's also the fact that Canada's oil is spoken for by somebody else, right? Do you want to kind of dive into that and kind of alleviate some of those fears?
Yeah, that is exactly what I am most interested in this conversation, because, of course, Canada has been a tremendous friend for a massive amount of Venezuelans, professionals and colleagues that are now Canadian as well, but we all care about what is going to happen in Venezuela. And the last that we need is Canada start seeing that with it is convenient or not to support the democracy in Venezuela, because that no, on the contrary, we need the support of everybody, Canadians the most. And I think it's a great opportunity for the Canadian technology. We Venezuelans have also helped to produce technologies in Canada for Canada that can be applied in Venezuela. And then the companies are being created. My group of research at the university spun off several companies that all of them are pertinent operating in Venezuela. So that could be a source of income, because we have created employments here in Canada. But very importantly is that I think on the contrary, is the necessity for Canada to get serious about the pipelines. To get really that as an urgent matter for Alberta, but for Canada in general. I mean, the GDP of the oil in Canada is quite high. It's more than 14%, but it's growing or has grown steadily. So the relevance of having the Chinese market, for example, or the Asian market in general, when now Venezuela is going to be probably privilegedly directing its oil to the Gulf Coast of the United States, to the East Coast of the United States, then there are markets that are not going to be reaching that oil as easy. And they already have performed some configuration of their refineries to process that same kind of oil. So wherever Venezuela move out, in that place, Canada may move in. So it is a wonderful opportunity also for Canada to not only grow, also participate in technology in many other places.
Another question there. I have two there. One, I want to dive into a little bit about the Canadian pipelines and what we were talking about earlier regarding BC, regarding Carney. But first, I was also curious, like one thing that we covered, 9 million people fled Venezuela, and they need people to actually go there and work. And well, it's probably going to end up creating jobs at some point for Canadians because we have a huge amount of people who specialize in this field. What you're probably going to see is more hiring going on in the oil sector if Venezuela does pick up, because one, they're probably going to headhunt some people that are here in Canada, which will make room for promotions here in Canada. It'll make room for more jobs. And if there isn't room for jobs here, there might be the opportunity for people to go down to Canada. Correct. Now, I don't know the interpolitical or geopolitical, can we get Canadians into Venezuela to get jobs? That'll probably be up to Trump if it keeps going in this direction, right?
Yeah, well, that is a variable that is very is unconscionable.
It's a wild card
because of the character of
Trump
the
himself.
personage. But what is clear is not because the United States started ramping up in the production of oil, the Canadian oil production went down.
Yeah,
there was some typical problems of market competitions and oil qualities and so on. But Canada cannot say that Texas was affecting Calgary. On the contrary, I think the relationship between Texas and Alberta is enormous. I go to Texas and I find tons of professionals that are Canadians that either worked here or just migrated there because they had some skills that they were, and the reverse. Many Americans have come, and I have still find in downtown, many Americans working in Canadian companies.
Yeah, I have a lot of friends who...
with Venezuela, it's going to be the same.
Yeah.
With Venezuela, it's going to be a familiarity. There was already a sort of, otherwise I wouldn't have come here.
Yeah.
I knew many professionals here and was able to install relatively quickly here. So I think that is the fluid of the flow of technologies, of inventions, of new ways of doing and so on, that transfer immediately is very, very good. And the specialization of companies in Canada, which has happened in the last 20 years, I mean, that is going to be a benefit both for Canada and for Venezuela. Canada is going to impact Venezuela back in the production and is going to receive compensation for those activities, putting technology there and keeping employments here. So I don't think it's straightforward that just because Venezuela is going to start producing barely $1.5 million in 3-4 years or $2 million in 5 years, that is going to be a very significant impact for the Canadian economy.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree.
The Albertan economy.
Yeah, and then let's dive a little bit more into what we were just touching about. Like when it comes to Canada, we need to pump up our oil production and our definitely get it out to some new markets as well. I think there's a lot of talk about Carney making deals, but those deals haven't really closed. They could drag on. I've seen stuff like this from the Canadian government drag on until the next election's up so that you have something to get elected on, right? Yeah. It's funny you can compare this to cannabis with Trudeau. And it's interesting because to my understanding, the jurisdiction of this, it relies on the federal government has the jurisdiction for pipelines across borders of provinces. Yet Carney is kind of hiding behind the Premier of BC. Now, you know, you still need people in BC to like you as the Premier, and you still need the seats, and you still need people like you need your party to agree with what you're doing. So I understand why he would say, oh, if they don't agree, we're not going to do it, because you have to make sure that you're not betraying your party. It's just interesting to see like what is going to hold this up, and to what degree is he going to start moving as things in Venezuela pump up?
Oh, yeah, that would be interesting. But, you know, I believe that it's political troubles that are really hiding the potential reality that we may have. Mm-hmm. I don't think that passing pipelines from Alberta to BC, through BC, you are going to have to use labor.
Yep.
You're going to have to build a port. You're going to have to manage facilities all the way through. So you're going to generate employment. You're going to generate economic activity. You're going to collaterally in those ports have additional products that can be marketed, even lumber or other things.
Yep.
So I don't think I think when people realize really in the neighbor province that economic impact is going to be positive, they won't be mixing with these quarrels that are politic, because here they have the Conservative Party and there they are, I don't know, NDP or whatever they are, this game between politicians is going to disappear. And I think what we have is to just put in evidence that situation. The same happened with Venezuela. I mean, Canada needs those pipelines. Alberta needs those pipelines. And Venezuela is the best that may happen. So you finally realize that diversification in your production of oil is what is going to grant a better price for your oil, more revenue for the industry in general, and open spaces for developing other economies around the oil and gas industry.
You brought up lumber, for instance. The biggest buyer of our lumber, I believe, was the U.S. before Trump.
Yes.
And now, once again, Trump's cut down on that. And that's another reason that we do need the port. So that's a really good look at it as well. Is it's not for oil, it's for Canada. It's for the economy. It's going to create jobs. It's going to create jobs all the way from the bottom all the way to the top. You're going to have architects. You're going to have engineers. You're going to have planners. You'll see a boom.
What I am more scared is about ideologies. Those that make a principle that we cannot produce one more drop of oil. Are almost Chavistas and Maduristas in the bottom, because what we want is everybody to be poor. Because we're going to deteriorate the quality of life of everybody just to be conserving what? I mean, the whole world, the entire world is going to be continuing until we produce much better technologies.
And then until there's a technology that outweighs what we have, until people are adopting that, we can't just stop. We'll fall behind everywhere.
We won't.
I think it's the same as when you look at right now, there's a big race in AI. And if, for instance, the states or whoever stopped chasing AI and stopped building data centers, do you think China would stop? They're going to keep going. Do you think anyone else is going to stop? No. What you're doing is you're putting yourself at a deficit. You have to have a light at the end of the tunnel, hopefully, where you say, if we can get this technology here, then it's going to push us to the next discovery. I think that's how it's always worked. And especially with automation and with new things that are brought on, it's always ended up increasing the amount of jobs and increasing the amount of workflow too. So we can hope that
remind me
happens.
A teacher I had when I was a kid that told me, do you think that when you take a nail and you get a hammer and you put the nail inside and you hang a portrait or you hang something, next time you're not going to use the hammer, you're not going to use the nail, you're going to use it. So if you came with AI, everybody wants to use AI. Because it's the easiest way of doing now many activities, many jobs.
You can see our revenue
with accuracy, do it in an intelligent and smart way. So it's impossible that we deny ourselves that tool. It's we're going to end with the cars, finish the cars production, because that causes pollution, contamination, because Tesla has a footprint of.
Do you know people who drive Teslas in Calgary? So when you go to Vancouver and you're on the road in Vancouver, I think 7 out of 10 cars is a Tesla, because it's warm there. It's easy for those batteries.
Easy for them, yes.
In Calgary, and I was on a vacation road trip with my girlfriend, and we went there, and I was like, why is everybody, to an Uber driver, why is everybody in Tesla? And they're like, well, the batteries, it's warm here. They last a long time. We don't have to worry about the cold. And I was like, that makes so much sense, because in Calgary, anyone that I know who buys a Tesla is trying to get rid of it after the first winter. right? And when we do look at these things, there's a lot of snake oil involved. I've been promised for the last 20 years from Elon Musk that we were going to have self-driving cars. And I'm sure he's saying the same thing with Sam Altman every time they say, oh, all jobs will be gone by 2027 because AI is so good. They're pumping their stock. They're doing the same thing that Trump does when he delays an invasion or he says he's going to invade. They're pumping, they're playing a market. And you have to be vigilant of that, and you have to watch out.
You probably were too young or still weren't born when I was, let's say, mature adult. I am more mature now, but I remember people were scared because the computers were going to replace every single secretary, every single escriban, whoever was using typewriters.
Yeah.
Nowadays, you see that nobody remembers that.
Yeah.
There was no such crisis. There was no unemployment caused by the massive use of computers. Nowadays, everybody has computers, several computers at home, and nothing happened.
The productivity increased by so much that the people who, by the way, you specialized in typewriting, you did a course for typewriting, a school course, and then it was your job. But the computer ended up bringing it to everyone. And now everyone is typing. And that's what productivity does. It's the same with the factory line, right? They're like, oh, everyone's going to lose their job. Productivity increased so much. I think that you look at it as consumer goods increasing.
Resistance to technology is a loss of opportunity.
Yeah.
And I am in the world of technology for the oil science and for oils in general and for renewable oils and for lithium and in technologies and all that. And I noticed that that is one problem we have in Canada, is that we love, in technology matters, we want to be second. We end up being the last to incorporate technology.
100%.
We never want to be the first to put technology forward. And now is the time to do that. If you put technology in the oil sands, you're going to end up producing a much lower cost than what it's going to cost Venezuela in the period to conquer back some markets.
Yeah.
So if Canada wants to really be defensive of its business, oil business, it has to do the pipelines. It has to incorporate technology that is out there, out of the oil companies, but is even in Calgary, is in Edmonton, is in many companies that produce technology for the oil sands. They are very resistant to fast incorporation, fast tracking this. But that has to change, and the government has to change as well, that approach toward opening.
There's a lot of
spaces.
ideology these days where you're rather like you have to be this far side or that far side. And that's only about 15% on either side that's speaking up. The real problem is that the moderate conservative or the moderate liberal doesn't have a voice because they're scared, because you're chastised when you speak up. Absolutely. And it's very important that you do speak up and you ignore those extremists who say, oh, if you say this, then you're as bad as the guy who says this. They compare you to the worst of the flock. And really, when you look at any type of demographic, you have yourself a bell curve. And you have the two extremes here. Any online poll, any post that you make online, you're never going to have the people who agree with it aren't going to answer, and the people who don't care aren't going to answer. The only thing that you get is the 15% on the far side that has an extremely strong opinion about it. And there's a lot of psychologists and stuff that talk about that. In the day of social media, everybody thinks that there's such strong opinions, but really all you're seeing are the two far ends of the bell curve. And that's really interesting because
constantly confronting and bringing us in the melee without having to do anything.
If you have one similar idea, if you align with one thing, they're going to use it against you. They're like, you're as bad as them.
Yeah, exactly.
And that has to change. And people have to kind of stick up for themselves on that. And it's tough to do. I try to.
Me too. I listen very radical opinions from the left. I tend not to pay attention. Very radical in the right. And I tell myself, okay, we are really contaminating the clean discussion that need to be done on our resources, our population, our necessities, how to build a future for our country. That is important.
Some things have to be taken off of social media and handled
by
like
the way,
humans.
the most of the Venezuelans that are here now with 20 years, 15 years living here, very few are going to go back to Venezuela if that is a fear that they may have.
Yeah, they went through something that...
2 daughters, 2 boys. They are married. I have grandchildren here. So that is impossible anymore.
Yep.
I mean, I could have thought of that 5 years, 10 years after. When Schulich converted our engineering faculty at the University of Calgary with the denomination of Schulich School of Engineering, he came to me and asked me, "But Pedro, you do wonderful things here, but I'm going to put my name in here. Are you going to be leaving if Venezuelan government change because you're going to be offered a position, whatever, in the government?" No way. I already have everything here. If I didn't do it 10 years in 2010, I'm not going to do it anymore. And many of my colleagues. But we are going to be going to Venezuela. We're going to support that development. We may go to some training.
It goes back to like what you were saying earlier about like it's almost impossible for like the cabinet, the government, the laws to come back like naturally, and then what you have is like, well, the U.S. will step in and they'll try to make it all, and it's like maybe that's good, maybe it's bad, some parts of both probably. But it sounds like there will be a need of some sort of body to step in, no matter what, whether it's America or not, whether maybe some sort of UN body or something. It has to happen because a lot of people have left. And
what is going to happen at Chevron, for example? Chevron is going to bring back some Venezuelans that work already at Chevron. They're already in California, or they are already in other countries working for Chevron. Now these guys are from Venezuela. They speak Spanish and they know very well, and they know very well the corporation. No, we are going to operate with them, and they're going to train the new
probably get a good offer
Venezuelans,
too.
And so it's going to happen in a totally different way that people may imagine. Or it's going to impact us in a drastic way. No, it's going to go much smoother than that. Because usually the lowest steep slope is not the one we foresee. We are dramatic in the shocks that are happening right now.
Yeah, I think one thing that's interesting is it is what you were talking about is more the climate pressure. In Venezuela, there's probably a lot less climate pressure on the industry than there is in Canada, and that's that ideology that we're kind of poking at, which everybody pokes at here in Alberta at least. But that'll be interesting to see how that develops here in Canada, because that's really what has to change to be able to get the pipeline across, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's a problem. It's an environmental problem. It's a false environmental problem.
Yeah. But that's what I mean.
Coming back to Venezuela, you would be surprised how Latin American countries are involved in the climate change thing. Colombia, even the current president, that hopefully is not going to be president for next year, but they have as a priority policy the coping with the environmental problems.
Yeah.
That's the decision of the Colombians. They elected that president. But I would say they are much more environmentalists than Canada, than any place, even Quebec.
Yeah.
I think Venezuelans have been always an oil country, and we look at it with much more care, carefully, because it's our industry. It has been always the first source of income of the country. So that of eliminating the oil from fuels and from everywhere production, we would like to be resistant a little bit, like Albertans. We would like to consider more reductions. We want to be more efficient. We all want to have a better environment, but also we all want to be living in a comfortable way. So I don't think in Venezuela that is going to be popular ever.
Yeah.
But in Colombia, in Mexico, perhaps, that has already diversified very much. But in most of Latin American countries, I would say it's a sensitive topic, as it is in many regions in Canada, and determine also sometimes the vote, bad or good, of the people.
Yeah.
That is sad, because they need to be much more instructed in environmental things, instead of voting for axiomatically for the left or something like that, because
A lot of people just vote on billboards, is what
because
I
they
would
are
say. They
apparently
see a
the good
slogan and they say, "Oh,
Yeah,
I
exactly.
like that slogan."
people. Yeah,
I
love
don't
to
know
be
the
clean.
stats. I don't know the analytics, but I
Yeah.
like the slogan. And that happens on both sides. I'm going to ask you one more question here before we start wrapping up. What are the 3 things that you'd watch for over the next 5 to 10 years to kind of tell how the Venezuelan oil industry is progressing?
Okay, I had noted that somewhere. I think I have it in my cell phone. The very first is how the end of the Madurista Chavista government happens.
Yeah.
It is essential. Returning to legality, returning to satisfying the minimum requirements of the oil companies is a must. So, and we are seeing it. The president of Exxon just said, "Don't think we're going to rush there." Okay,
Yep,
we
that
have to
makes
look
sense.
at it very carefully to put more money.
That's
in
the
Venezuela.
security and whatnot that we
And
were
all
talking
of them think alike. And you would think alike. I would think alike.
Yep.
If I had to put money from a corporation.
Yeah.
Like okay, that's the first aspect. Second, I would look into what is really the way in which they are going to make the company grow, the oil activity grow. There has to be aspects related to PDVSA and the legal status of the corporation there, because in Venezuela, in principle, the government or the country, as they call it, has a total sovereignty on the oil production. The oil pertains to all Venezuelans. It is not distributed by concessions or things like that. They would have to change that regime. Once the legality is established, once you have a real representation of the population and the country, and then you are going to change that. Otherwise, a de facto government, either imposed by the United States or Chavista or whatever, is going to have serious troubles to recover PDVSA. And even you cannot push the oil companies to enter everywhere, because they need also a transfer of certain wealth. If only American companies are going to operate in Venezuela, there has to be a transfer of knowledge, documents, everything. That if they arrive and they have to do another inspection and need to do exploration and revalidation of reserves, and that's going to take forever.
Yeah.
It's going to take them 10 years instead of
sending
3,
like
5
engineers
years.
out to every single
Right.
spot.
They need to establish a conversation, a relationship with PDVSA, whether they want it or not. So that's not going to be really soon. That's the second aspect. The third aspect is how the markets are going to restructure themselves. China has contract agreements that nobody would like to have violated, the same way that I didn't like to have violated the agreements that the United States may have had with Venezuela on technologies and oil production, oil acquisition for the oil refineries in the United States. And that was violated, or that was just broken agreement. Those broken agreements doesn't say good of any country. So you have to make sure that China recovers their investment, good or bad. If we are a serious country, we have to respond to that. China,
100%.
I don't know, it needs 300,000 barrels per day. You have to deliver 300,000 barrels per day.
Yep.
And they will they will know that they cannot grow that quota of oil from Venezuela. That's the opportunity for Canada to come. And then that restructuring of the markets, we have to watch it very carefully, very closely, and especially the fall of the oil production in the United States, because that's the main reason that the United States made the investment of getting rid of this narco-trafficking government. It is not only because what they argued, that I absolutely believe is a legitimate argument, that they are destroying the American youth and the Canadian as well. But the oil is the first argument, and then they must have security. If they come back to 7, 6, 5 million barrels per day production in the United States, Venezuela can ramp up that production. That's the first guarantee. But if they exceed that pace, then the oil price is going to go up. Because it's going to be more go down. I'm sorry, going to be more production than demand. So that balance is what's going to really affect. It's about price of the oil, which is the one that determines whether the United States produces 10 million barrels per day or produces 8 million barrels per day. Nobody wants to produce 10 million barrels per day for a low price of oil. So you cannot make it 50.
Basically,
because
you
close
constrict
down.
it until the oil price
You
is
have to
below.
balance that out.
It's same as
that
diamonds.
is the third aspect that need to be. So the two first are related to Venezuelan legality and the process of ramping up the oil production, how they are going to technically implement it. And the third is the structure of the markets are going to be determining a lot of decisions, and hopefully Canada understand that on time. Our Alberta government seems to be very clear on that, but the federal government need to understand that. So we are proactive instead of waiting and in 10 years saying, "Oh, we knew it was going to happen." No, that would be totally criminal for our economies, right?
Lots ahead for us to keep our eyes for.
Oh yeah.
Well,
we have to be on top of that.
So get out
and make sure that the rest of the population, most of the Canadians, at least know exactly what is happening. Not only with Venezuela, as you mentioned at the beginning, Iran. Iran is a terrible problem. I mean, what is going to happen there is going to determine the price today, tomorrow, not in the 5 years. And
it'll be fluctuating a lot as long as we got a wild card calling the shots.
So I think we are in a good position right now.
No, I feel good about Canada. I think that there's still some hurdles to get over, and that'll happen. It has to happen, especially with what we're looking at these days with the inflation and the effects that it's having on people in the different classes. It's huge. So
it's huge.
We're looking to the future. Well, Pedro, thank you so much for coming on today, especially short notice.
I hope I contributed to put some light on aspects that
I learned a lot. So hopefully everybody else does
great.
as well.
Thank you if I did.
Thank you, sir.
You were very well documented as well.
Oh, thank you, sir.